and today I'm picking my first drag queen TBR. My first drag queen TBR. I can't wait. If you haven't seen my video talking about this challenge, I'll link it up above and you should go and watch that first. It explains a bit more what I'm doing. But in today's video it will be me going through the process of picking the different books, the drag queens, seeing if that drag queen is going to Shantae stay or sashay away, and sort of seeing if I'm narrowing down my TBR, fingers crossed. Well, I will be narrowing down my TBR, but it's just a fun way of picking my TBR off my shelves. So my first, the first prompt is to pick my queen. So I've got my cards. I'm going to pick my first queen from the cards. I can't see. I'm going for this one. Ah, I've picked Kimchi. Kimchi is my Korean queen, and this one I have to read a book by an author or with a main character who is South Korean. So let's see if I can find that on my shelf. Okay, after a little look around my shelves, I've found 4 potentials for this. The first one is Free Food for Millionaires by Min Jin Lee. This is about a young woman who is of Korean descent. She's been to Princeton, but she's come out, she's got no job, she's got some bad habits, and it's set in the backdrop of New York. However, this is quite a meaty one. It's about 650 pages. I've just been reading quite a lot of big books recently, so I'm not 100% sure on this one. I've also got this one by David Yoon called Frankly in Love. This is a YA contemporary story. This one is sort of a fake dating plot from what I can gather. Our main character, Frank Lee, his parents are expecting him to marry a Korean girl. They live in California. However, he's fallen for Britt, who is a white girl, and so he has to keep her a secret. His other friend is in a similar situation, and so they decide to make a pact. They'll pretend that they're dating, and yeah, we'll see what happens from there, I suppose, in this one. I think this would be a fast read because it's a YA book. It's one that's been on my shelf for quite a long time, so I think this is definitely in the contender pile. I think I'm going to put this one in the no for now, but this one's a contender. The next one that I picked off my shelf is If You Leave Me by Crystal Hannah Kim. This is set actually in Korea, and it's about a young girl of 16, and there is a communist-backed army that come and sort of infiltrate where she lives, and they end up having to flee to a refugee camp. I think it is a romance in there. The thing again I'm worried about this is that it might have quite heavy topics that maybe I'm not feeling at the moment. I'm looking for something a bit lighter. I've been reading some quite heavy books. It's a beautiful book though, but I think this is going to go on the no for now. And then the final one is Anna K by Jenny Lee. This is a relatively new book that's come out, and I believe it's a retelling of Anna Karenina. This again is sort of a YA contemporary love story, I think, of sorts. It's about a young girl. I think it's set in, is it New York? And she is sort of young, oh no, yeah, New York. She's young, beautiful, rich and popular, and she bumps into this sort of playboy, I think, at Grand Central Station, and she's meant to stay away from him, but she just can't. And yeah, this one definitely piques my interest. So these two, I think, are the ones that I'm thinking of, but I really am sort of attracted to this one, I think. I don't know if it's the shiny glittery cover or the sort of ties to Anna Karenina or the fact that it's a female author and a female protagonist. I don't know, I tend to be drawn to them more. I don't know, but I think this is the one I'm going to read for Kimchi's prompt. So I'm going to read this. I'll come back to you and tell you my thoughts, and then I'll pick the next one in my challenge and see how I get on with that. Okay, it's a few days later, and it's a beautiful day here. I've been sitting on the hammock in the garden and listening to the audio and following along with Anna K by Jenny Lee. So I have finished this now, and I'm going to give it 4 stars. Before I talk to you a little bit about it, I've just made a note here I want to talk about. There's a couple of trigger warnings. There is triggers in here for cutting, drug abuse and overdose. There is also death and cheating. And I've put here stinking rich entitlement. So if that's a trigger for you, then don't read this book. There's some really good representation in here. We have Jewish characters. Well, we have a Jewish black adopted character, which I thought was really good. There is Korean, half Korean characters, and This is, as sort of it says on the tin, really, a little bit Gossip Girl, a little bit Crazy Rich Asians. It's about this upper echelon of the stinking rich in New York, these people that just throw away thousands of dollars without thinking about it, hire private jets to go places. And it's a reimagining of Anna Karenina, which I don't know the story massively well, but I remember having watched the Keira Knightley Anna Karenina and not really enjoying it that much. So I was going into this with a little bit of trepidation. Actually, it was a grower for me. The first sort of scene, the first thing that happens is there's a girl called Lolly who's discovered that her boyfriend Stephen has been cheating on her, and she's found you know, sexts from this girl on his phone. So she's locked in his mum's closet, wearing a fur coat with, you know, black mascara coming down her face, and he's called in his sister Anna Kay, who is our Anna Karenina here, to come and try and help him sort of sort things out. And the story progresses from there. I enjoyed this way more than I thought I would. I think if you can sort of suspend yourself into forgetting how obnoxious and privileged these people are, then it's not so bad. Yeah, I don't know. That didn't bother me so much because I grew up watching Gossip Girl. I loved Gossip Girl. I thought it was great fun, and that's, you know, watching these sort of privileged people come unstuck and the sort of dilemmas that go on. It almost feels fantastical. It doesn't feel like real life, and so I can sort of suspend disbelief a little bit. There was one thing in here. There was a racist slur in here to do with Korean, and someone saying, oh, I'm surprised he didn't karate chop him. But I thought the author put that in for a reason, and did then address that by saying that the other character realised it was racist, and she uses the word racist, but I think she wrinkles her nose at the racism, but then she doesn't call it out, which I think maybe there's a missed opportunity there at sort of calling out and saying that, or maybe just not including it. So our author, I think, is Korean as well, which I appreciated because she can talk about the Korean experience. Yeah, it was just really good. One thing I really like about these more sort of big meaty classics like Anna Karenina and sort of War and Peace, which I really struggled with the war aspect of, is, and Count of Monte Cristo, which I loved, is this array of characters. It almost feels like, although Anna is our sort of central character, there is so many other plots going on, and they really do develop those a lot more. So we've got Dustin, who is the Jewish black adopted guy who is tutoring Anna's brother Stephen, and is he's got his own subplot about this girl that he likes, and then he thinks he loses her, and he's got a brother who has sort of drug problems, and then you've got Stephen's girlfriend Lolly and their relationship with their families and sisters, and so there's all this sort of intertwining of all these characters, very much like Gossip Girl, where we do have our central characters, mainly those sort of two girls centrally in Gossip Girl, but then you've got all these characters having their own lives on the outskirts, and you do get to know them, so it does feel like a sort of whole world rather than just you're narrowing down into one little area. The writing style was great. The only thing I didn't like so much was the font in the book was quite sort of small, which is why I enjoyed listening to it as an audiobook. But once I got stuck into the audio, I didn't want to put it down really, so I really enjoyed this. So 4 stars, Kimchi, 4 stars so far. So next it comes time for challenges. So I've got my challenge cards here. I'm going to pick my first challenge. Let's pick off the top. Right, what is challenge number 1? It's a music challenge, so I've got to pick a book that sounds good from what you hear. So this is a book that I've heard good things about. Let me go and look at my shelves, and I'll come back and let you know which one I'm going to pick for that. Okay, that was pretty easy actually. There is a book on my shelf that I am hearing nothing but amazing things about. It's got some really good diversity in it, and I'm going to pick that one up. I'm in the mood, not quite for fantasy, but a bit more, I don't know, I keep seeing people, Noelle Gallagher, whose channel I absolutely love. If you haven't seen her channel before, I don't know how I missed it. I haven't seen it until a few months ago, so I've just fallen in love with her channel. But she has read Ready Player One, and she just did her mid-year book freakout tag and said how much she was surprised and loved Ready Player One. This one gives me those vibes. I loved Ready Player One as well, and this one makes me think it's got that sort of vibe to it. I've just been hearing nothing but good things about this, so I'm hoping it's a 5-star, because we need that for Kimchi. Kimchi needs a 5-star, so or at least a 4-star. So I'm going to go and read this now, and I'll come back to you and let you know how I get on. Okay, would you believe it, but I have finished this one in an afternoon. Slay by Brittney Morris. I just thought this was really great. It was verging on 5 stars for me, but I ended up giving it 4 stars. It just wasn't quite at that 5 stars. I'd say it was probably about a 4.5. The story is about 17-year-old Kira, and she goes to a good school. She's a really great student. She's sort of headed off to college, hopefully, and she is one of just a handful, or a few, I think there's only 3 or 4, or a few black children at her school, or black kids at her school. And she has created a role-playing sort of computer game, sort of card-based fighting type game, where an online community which is exclusively for black people. She finds this a place that she can go, be herself, and feel safe. And she created this place due to various things that have gone on in her life. She talks about in the book how she was playing other computer games. She really enjoyed computer games, but the ones that she played, the avatars that she picked, she couldn't, you know, they didn't have ones with brown or black skin, and the ones that they did were the trolls, or you know, specific avatars which were ones that she didn't like. And she wanted to build a place that was exclusively for black people, to immerse themselves in being black culture, and just a safe space for them to be themselves. And sort of the access to this game is via sort of an invitation from someone who already plays. So when a young black student is murdered over a dispute from the game, this sort of throws everything sort of up into the air. No one knows that she's the creator of this game, and so she's kept it secret from everyone in her life, her boyfriend, her sister, her family, her friends, and so this sort of attention from the media about this death, about this fact that this dispute came from this, starts to throw up questions of unsafe games and racism. And I just thought it was really well handled. There's obviously a lot of things in here that I can't speak of because I'm not black and I haven't had a black experience, and so those things I don't feel like I'm qualified to talk about. But there were some things in there that I thought were really well put, and I wanted to read a couple out. One specific bit is Kira's best friend Harper. Harper's white, and at near the very beginning, Harper asks Kira, should I get dreadlocks? If I got dreadlocks, would that be offensive to black people? And what I appreciated is that at the time it's sort of brought up how Kira feels about that. She doesn't speak it out loud to Harper, but she says it to us in the narrative that you know, that makes her feel uncomfortable, and why should she be speaking about this, and Harper shouldn't ask her those things. And then later on, Harper, I wrote this down because I just thought it was really good. Harper asks, later apologizes, and she said, I was ignorant. I knew it would make you uncomfortable, so I should have kept it to myself, or I should have just Googled it. And I think that just reiterates the point of what a lot of black people are telling us now. Don't ask us how to be anti-racist. Don't ask us to give you all the information. Go out there and find it for yourself. Every black person's experience of being black is different, although there is obviously, I should think, you know, some collective feelings, like there is with every group, but you can't ask one person to speak for the whole of their race and and also it's just rude. So one thing that came from this, reading this, is just how tired Kira is of the things that she has to deal with on a daily basis. And I think they're all things that are constantly being reiterated to us at the moment, especially from black creators in booktube. I thought there was so many parallels here to things that have been said, the black creators have been saying on their channels and saying to us, and I just thought this was really brilliant, written in a book. I really appreciated this book, and I think it's a really important book to have out there. Another thing that I liked that was said in here was, someone says in there, being pro-black isn't being anti-white. I think that was a really interesting statement, and I think it just, you know, it makes that point that if someone is calling you out for something, they're not being anti-white, they're being pro-black, and that just because you're called out on something doesn't mean that that person is attacking being white. They're attacking the fact that you've made them feel uncomfortable, and that you need to acknowledge that and say that you'll do better. And I just thought this book I just felt like this book just was the perfect time to read it, really. And yeah, brilliant book. So I gave this one 4 stars, but it was nearly 5 stars. So Kimchi is doing quite well, and now it's time to pick the next one. So the next set of cards is RuPaul's Category Is for the catwalk. So I'm gonna pick one now. Oh, what is it? It says category is big hair everywhere, big book. Oh no. Okay, let me find a big book and I'll come back to you. So this one is the one that I've picked up. It's nearly 500 pages, so I'm classing it as a big book. It's Furyborn. It's book 1 in the Imperium trilogy. I've had this for ages and never picked it up, and I'm just sort of feeling like I might be ready for a bit more fantasy again. I have heard really great things. I think it's got a fairly good Goodreads rating, and why not? Now is the time to be picking up those books that I had on my shelves. I bought them for a reason. I'll come back to you when I've read some. Okay, so I've now finished Furyborn by Legrand, and I don't know if this is because I haven't been reading much fantasy recently, but it just didn't quite manage to hit the mark for me. I don't know if or what it was. It's a book set in dual perspective. We've got the perspective of Riel and we've got the perspective of Eliana, and they're also in different times, and we're following Riel, who is this girl who has these sort of powers. It's set in a world where people can use the powers of 7 different elements. So you've got these sort of metal, earth, wind, air, fire, and normally in order to control those, people have to use sort of an object to sort of help them manifest and create this magic, and you only get sort of one. Occasionally I think there have been people that have had sort of the ability to sort of control 2, but it seems that Riel has the ability to control all of them. And this makes her sort of someone people are scared of, and also they sort of have to check that she can, so they set these sort of trials because there's a prophecy. And at the very start of the book, Riel's obviously older, she's just given birth, and she's given this boy Simon, the baby, to sort of disappear with, to try and save the baby's life, because there's obviously something going on, someone is trying to hurt her or hurt the baby. And so we're then following this dual timeline of these 2 people. We're following Riel and following her journey up until this point where she has the baby, and we're following Eliana, who is living hundreds of years later and is sort of quite a bit of an assassin, or just sort of leads a life full of violence and fighting against various different people, and she's quite angry. And Eliana ends up joining up with this sort of rebel leader to try and take down certain things, and she's not really doing it for the reasons they want her to. She's doing it because her mother's been stolen and kidnapped, and she needs to find out what's happened to her, so she's sort of using them to find out what's happened to her. and it's very fast paced, which is normal with sort of YA fantasy. It took me a while to get to grips with what was going on in the story. I felt a bit lost, but that is quite normal for sort of fantasy. It takes a while to sort of get yourself situated with the world and what's going on, so you know, I can't penalise it for that. I think the biggest thing was there was one particular point of view that I liked more than the other, which meant that I was quite disappointed when every other chapter it was the others sort of chapters, and so it led for sort of a bit of a bumpy ride, really, a bit of an up and down, and it wasn't until nearer the end that I started to feel more connected to both of them. So it was fast paced, it was fun, it was interesting. I don't think it's necessarily one, unless you tell me in the comments that I should pick up the next one. I think it's going to be a trilogy. I think the third one's coming out in October. The second one's already out. It was good enough. I enjoyed it. I give it a 3-star. It didn't quite get to a 4-star for me. So Kimchi's in a bit of trouble because there's only one more challenge left before we have to find out if she has to lip sync, and I think from looking at my scores she might be guaranteed to lip sync, so we need to get the best score out of this next book so that she doesn't have to lip sync quite as hard as if we didn't. So now it's time for the judges. There's only 4 judges, so let's I'm mixing them up down here. I'm not looking, I'm looking straight at you, and I'm going to take the top card and turn it over. Oh, it's Ross Matthews, Ross the intern, and his challenge is a new to you author. So let me go and find one of those and I'll come back and let you know what I'm going to read. Okay, I think I'm in the mood for something a bit lighter, and so I'm going to pick up this one. It's called Forbidden Promises by Cynthia Williams. This is a little mass market paperback. They're so small and sweet, and this was something that I'd seen on someone else's channel. It has black main characters. I believe that our author is also a black woman, that is right. And I've heard this is something that when you initially read the blurb that it feels quite problematic, because it involves a girl or a woman, sorry, getting involved with her sister's ex-husband or ex-boyfriend, which is, you know, no. But I've heard that it explains itself and that it's okay, and that it's very sweet and a really sort of engrossing book. So I'm going to read this one for this and hope that it's a 4 or 5 stars. Hopefully 5 stars, that's what we're aiming for. You know, poor old Kimchi's going to have to lip sync for her life, but at least we could do is sort of get her to a stage where it doesn't matter if she gets a few words wrong. So yeah, I'll come back to you when I've read this one. Okay, so it's later that day and I read this in a day. Forbidden Promises by Cynthia Williams. This is what I thought it was. It was a story about a sisters, or mainly our main character, India. She's been travelling, she's a musician, she hasn't been home for ages, she's got a break in her tour, she's coming back, and well, it's not a break in her tour, I think she's left where she was working and she's looking for something new. She's gone home for sort of a family reunion, found out that her brother Byron is running for office and has been sort of coerced into staying until that happens. And then we find out about the backstory. There was some sort of romance with this man who ended up marrying her sister. They're not married anymore. There's lots of things that people sort of don't know. There's lots of tension in this family. It's quite manipulative. The father's quite manipulative of everybody. And we're sort of following this romance now and the sort of implications of being together, and do they want to still be together? And it was good. I really enjoyed it. It was really definitely an addictive read, and our main characters were really you know, sweet and nice and kind, and you were really rooting for them. And as problematic as it seems about an ex-husband going, you know, dating a sister, I think, you know, this handled this quite well. I think it could have been done poorly and felt wrong and in bad taste, but actually it felt like the author has handled it really well. So I really enjoyed it and I gobbled it up, and I'll give it 4 stars. However, unfortunately, that doesn't save Kimchi. I have had a 4, a 3 and a 4, which gives me 15 points. And if you remember in my my TBR announcement video, in order to stay and not have to go into the lip sync battle, she needed 17 or more. So she's only got 15, but there may be the potential. Who knows? She's going to have to lip sync, so I shall be getting out my lip sync cards. Let's see what she's doing in the lip sync battle. Lip syncing for her life. It's When I Grow Up by the Pussycat Dolls, and for this the prompt is to read a YA book. So I shall find a YA book on my shelf, come back and let you know what it is. Okay, I think I'm going to go for this one, Rules for Being a Girl by Candice Bushnell and Katie Katugno. Don't know anything about it. It doesn't really tell me an awful lot anywhere. So I'm going into this one blind, and I'll come back and let you know. Hopefully it smashes out of the park and Kimchi gets to stay, but otherwise she will be sashaying away. Okay, so it turns out that Rules for Being a Girl by Candice Bushnell and Katie Katugno is a really quick read. It was just under 300 pages. I read it in a few hours and I was really disappointed. When we sort of go into it, the story is about our main character, and her and her friend are sort of a little bit objectifying their English teacher. They really love him, they think he's great, they really look up to him. He's quite young and hip and they think he's cool. And something happens, and when one of them reports it, they're not believed, and there's various other sort of repercussions from that. But there was just so many missed opportunities, so many things that I think are not giving a good like, if I'd read this as a teenager and something similar had happened to me, I wouldn't report it after reading this book. So I just think the way that it was written, I just didn't really enjoy it. And working in schools, I know how seriously any allegations are taken and how things would be looked into very thoroughly, and I just felt like that didn't happen, and I felt like it was a very convenient plot devices, some of the things that did happen. I'm being a bit wishy-washy about it because I don't want to spoil it if you did want to read it. But there was just so many things in there. There was so much foreshadowing. Nothing really happened that wasn't a surprise. There was a lot of tokenism in there. You know, all of a sudden she wants to be a feminist and she starts a feminist book club, but she has to be schooled on what feminism is. And I mean, I can understand she's a 17-year-old. She's going through this sort of discovery of feminism and discovering you know, what it means to stand up for yourself and that, but I just thought this was really poorly done. I didn't enjoy it at all. I've read one of Katie Katugno's books before and I didn't like that either. I know she's quite well loved, but it's just not something that I'd enjoyed. So I think I'm gonna have to give this 2. Poor old Kimchi has ended up with 17, and she needed 21 to get through to the next round. So I'm afraid Kimchi sashay away. So she's out of the competition. She's out of season 1 of Eleanor Reed's books Drag Race. So I shall be moving on in my next video to my next queen, and hopefully they'll fare a bit better, but we'll have to see. Hopefully they're not all sashaying away each time, but we'll see. But yeah, unfortunately this was a bit of a dud. It was a 2 stars, and yeah, it's a shame really, but there we go. So Kimchi will be sashaying away, and I'll come back to you with another one of these videos soon. Bye for now, BookTube.